Thank you for listening to SSB Wannabes. Make sure you keep up to date by following us on Twitter at SSB_Wannabes with 1E. Sometimes our schedule gets the best of us and we can't record when we want to, so keep your eyes on Twitter and you'll always know when the new episode is up. Anyway, enjoy the show.
Jmook is a wonderful player from upstate New York. He has been the king of the region for the last few years. He has been also in high school. And now it's time for him to meet the wide world of Melee. Jake, how are you?
GD, I'm great.
How's that for an intro, huh?
That's quite an intro.
No, it was all right. So thank you for coming on. I'm really excited. We've known each other for a little bit, but I want you to talk a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background, just for people who might not know who you are.
All right, so I'm Jmook. I hail from upstate New York. I've been in the scene for around like 4 to 5 years. 5 years coming up. I started pretty much how anyone starts when they find out about the game. You find out through Smashboards. I actually when the doc first came out, I actually watched it like the day after it was released. So I had a lot of media to go through to start off with.
Right.
And watched through that, and just started falling in love with the game, and I've only been loving it more ever since.
Sweet. So a few of your credentials. You have some amazing wins under your belt. You have notable wins over time versus Two Saint and IBDW. You guys had a little three-way trifecta going on for a little bit.
Yeah.
3-0 over the Moon. And recently you won Brooklyn Kumite 2, losing 1 game and winning 33 throughout the whole tournament. So I won't ask you to give. Is there a win I'm forgetting? Is there a big one?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. So that doesn't really do justice, I think, to where you're at. You're a player that gets a lot of hype, especially from people who know you. Disproportionately from people who know you, because it's exciting to see someone come from a region that's more kind of spread out and less known, and especially a region without its own major or real place to break through. So how do you feel coming from a region like that where it's difficult to kind of showcase your own skill? What does that do to you?
Well, first off, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure to have all these big events spread out so thin, so spread out, and that creates a lot of pressure for me, because obviously when I'm playing at home with Patches or anyone else who I can play with, I kind of have to transfer that mentality into tournament, because obviously if I only go to big tournaments like every couple months, every 6 months, I'm going to take it way more seriously. I'm going to put these pressures on myself, and I'm just not going to let myself flow as much as I would when I normally just play the game. So I think a lot of my tournament game plan comes from like playing friendlies at like midnight, just like thinking about the game at school while I'm doing other things. And ultimately it's just all about like cultivating as much potential into that one day, that one tournament day, and just making sure that you're having fun with it.
So that must be its own, it is its own skill, but that must be its own journey, having it all kind of ride on these big events that would come sometimes months apart from each other. What skills have you developed in particular, or what strategies have you come up with over the years to make sure that you're not cracking under the pressure?
It has a lot to do with the things I do in game. When I'm playing in tournament, I notice that I'm like, I'm holding my controller too tightly. My posture is like really stern and stiff. I try and do little things that help me relax, both in game and out of game. My favorite example, who's shown me this, is the Manalord from another notable player from upstate New York, and he always, he stresses like, good posture, like drink lots of water, stay hydrated, because those things ultimately will matter more than whether or not you can L cancel more than not.
Right. I remember Manalord being one of the people that was teaching me around that same time, and he was one of the first people I saw that would really take health seriously, that would show up to these tournaments with like some tin with beans and rice and a kale smoothie or something, he would really stress these types of self-care that wasn't really prominent. He was one of the earliest people I saw really focusing on that, so it's cool that he kind of gave you that info too.
And it's just such a great example to go off of, since he was like the first person I looked up to. He was the first person that was dominant at the time. And yeah, I just think that taking care of those things is by far just as important.
Yeah, Manalord is someone I would love to talk about him a little bit, just because he wasn't just the person winning a lot of tournaments for a good amount of time, straight up farming the region. Like, he would just go to so many different events and just keep on just racking up wins. Mm-hmm. But he was also hosting a lot and kind of developing the scene. Did that kind of upstate mentality stick with you too? Because I know you and your squad hosted a few tournaments. How do you feel TOing do you feel like that's a factor in your upcoming, or what's your experience with that?
I definitely think that from watching especially Mana over the years, it taught me that you have to make do with what you have. It's as simple as that. You have to go to these events, be present, and make the most out of it, which means that you're gonna have to you're also gonna have to take care of yourself as well. But I know that you and I both saw him as one of the best examples in that community at the time, and he just taught me how to just not be too hard on yourself, but also just what's the word? You can't really you can't put on these expectations on yourself and be selfish when those expectations don't pan out.
Right.
You have to take yourself out of your experience, your shell, and be okay, well, what am I doing for the environment around me, and how can I make that better? I think that's what he taught me that I've held on to the most.
So how do you think how do you feel you contribute to that? What is your role? Do you feel a responsibility being, I guess, the top player right now in the region? How's that make you feel?
In terms of responsibility, it's very little, because I can only contribute as much to when there are tournaments here,
right?
And they aren't really, they're not enough to rely on. But I go there, I try and play with everyone. I point out things to people who are struggling with certain matchups or certain moves, and yeah, I just try to make the most out of it. During college, what I would do is I would go to classes and I would have 2 full setups in my car, like 2 Wiis, 2 CRTs, and after class I would head up people on BU campus, Binghamton campus, and I would just ask if anyone wants to play. So I'd always every day after class, I'd always find someone to play with, and that's kind of how I wore a responsibility for just making sure that I'm helping out the scene as well. Not just by, giving them good practice, but also just letting them know that like it's like this game will teach you things that will carry out throughout the rest of your life.
Ooh, let's stick on that for a second. What do you have in mind when you say that?
I've always thought that your playstyle in Melee just reflects a lot about like what you value, what you're afraid of, your fears.
Your fears. Wow. Okay. Keep going.
And it's so hard to break down into, because at the end it's just a video game, but obviously we are people, and we're going to express ourselves through our experiences, and obviously there's something that's going to connect, right?
Mm-hmm. We'll sit on this, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to talk about this because I think that you've also brought this up in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing how you can extract your gameplay and connect it to your personality or what you're doing, every day.
Right. I could try to talk on it a little bit if you want.
But yeah, by all means, this is your podcast too.
Yeah. What I hear you saying is that there's just kind of a part of us that comes out through it, and there's a give and take on that, where you can sense a person's identity and a person's self through the game. In my experience, and that's something that I kind of heard as almost like a trope very early on. I think Prague was talking about how each person, in the documentary, Wife has a thing, has a section where he talks about personality coming through, and you can tell the difference, right? But it's not something you really understand until you kind of have 2, 3, 4, 5 years logged into the game, and you realize that this isn't an active choice of how we articulate ourselves, how we express ourselves. It's just as we come to terms with how we play, and as we kind of become comfortable with a play style and how we choose to approach it, that's kind of where the difference is, and that's when you could kind of start putting the person and the gameplay mesh together. It's after a few years of real subconscious discovery. That's at least my experience, where I thought that I was imposing my will on the game, but the game was more of a mirror of who I was becoming,
Yeah. Did you ever throughout your Melee journey, did you ever watch the way you play and connect it to things that you do outside, or the way you talk with people at like work, or like when you were in school?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I think the first time I thought about a fear was you just now, and I'm making these connections now, and it's a little eerie, just thinking about myself through that lens. But I've definitely looked at my Melee as a way of looking at how I approach my career and how I approach kind of everything that I care about, anything I'm passionate about or want to pursue. I handle it in a very similar way that I handle the game. It's just it takes a lot of kind of meeting it head on. You can't just casually play Melee and expect to go, like, if you are trying to go somewhere, you have to put your everything into it, at least for a certain amount of time, at least a little bit, and that's when those things start coming out.
Yeah, and that's always been one of your biggest strengths, is that you're not afraid to be brutally honest with yourself. Like, I feel like you are the most, you yourself are the most honest person when you're dealing with stuff.
Damn.
And then that's important in Melee too, because you can't expect to be someone that you're not. You have to, you know, tell yourself that these, like, there are no limits, but you just have to take the information that you know and the things that you care about and push them forward and see if there's other things that you might appreciate. You know, you just pick things up on the way, and that's how we grow.
Right. Well, I think, just to throw a compliment back on you, I think you are someone that has always had a really good grasp over what you don't know and what you aren't experienced enough, or what you aren't comfortable enough either talking about or kind of leading a conversation in. Granted, a lot of the conversations we do have are when we're playing, because like whenever I see you, I'm like, I gotta sit down and play this guy, and then you'll do some crazy shit in the game, and then we'll talk about that. So that's the one side. It's like, okay, yeah, he knows a lot about the game, and that's really exciting. But I've noticed that you very wisely do not, get in your own. I don't see your ego come out in ways that I would see some. Like, you have the position to be an asshole, but you haven't shown that. And that's simplifying it. That's just, I'm not trying to say you're just not an asshole. I'm trying to say I think you have a firm grasp over kind of your situation and what's going on around you better than a lot of other people. Your self-awareness is I think one of your big perks. Do you think that this is something you discovered with Melee, or are certain aspects of this things that you've known about yourself for a long time, and maybe you're discovering it again through this game, or is it just a coincidence?
So I connect a lot of Melee to music because I'm going to music education and performance. I play cello, guitar, piano, etc. And to me, they're all just like different like windows of perspectives that allow me to see what I value. And you know, in the end, if I'm practicing one thing and I'm investing time into it, I'm gonna get better at it. But what also is that whatever I'm caring about is also reflecting back at me what I have to learn, or what more I can squeeze out of my potential. And for Melee, that is just, for me, and my personality, just it comes from just, I tend to just prefer to observe people around me rather than get involved. That's one of my biggest gripes, is that I sit in a room and I observe other people. I know what every person is saying. I know like what they're probably thinking about based on their facial expressions. And sometimes to me that gives me more satisfaction than like projecting myself into the room. You know, for me, like when I project myself, it leaves me vulnerable to not picking up other things that are in my peripheral vision. If that makes any sense.
Right, that does make sense.
So I guess in Melee, that comes, what that zeroes in on is it forces me to not see myself as important than anyone else. It allows me to see the big picture and to see everything else around me. That's why I love teams in Melee, because that is also a skill.
Right.
Having a group conversation is very similar to teams in Melee. You know, you
yeah. Being able to kind of scope out, to see things, to not be overwhelmed with the micro. Yeah, all incredibly valuable skills, and seeing that through line is really interesting. I think you're of a unique breed within this community of instinctively introspective and observant people. Not to say that everyone is an extrovert in this community. That's not the case, but I think there is a little more kind of trying to take what we have and like impose it onto a match or onto another person, or when it comes down to the game, there's a lot of this is who I am, this is what it's going to be, and that is how you can't adapt, and that's how you lose harder than you'd lose if you were within the game and constantly breathing with it, in and out, rather than just out, out, out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm getting at? Like, there's
that kind of like I'm blindly trying to hone in on the brand that I'm trying to put out for
Yep.
other people, just to see, like, both in personality and in game, just so I can feel different than anyone else, because my tag is this, my character is this, I do this move sometimes.
Right, and that's I mean, talk about tag. Just make it about my own experience. I mean, Poonslayer was such a ridiculous tag for so long. I can't believe I had that for the amount that I did. But I think why I hated it so much was kind of what we're talking about. Is it's sort of, okay, I'm here to do this. This is it's kind of putting expectations onto yourself beforehand, and I think there's this kind of desperate grab for identity that we all are forced to reckon with all the time. Where do we fit on these rankings? Where do we fit on the PR or on the tournament results? What wins do we have? Who are we friends with? Who do we room with at what tournament? Like, all this stuff that for some reason is becoming the most important part of the community is who how many followers you have.
Yeah.
And it's coming from this basic human need of being heard and being seen. All that's going around while we're playing these games, and the expectation comes down to, like, okay, what are the implications of this win? What happens if you were to win? I think what made me so excited coming up in Upstate was that there was an understanding that nobody really gave a shit who won a tournament. Like, we all knew that realistically in the national stage no one was watching us. And as shitty as that is, maybe in your position, that you're like, okay, now I have to really show that, like, okay, you're you should have a sponsor and you should be flown out to tournaments, all this stuff. You have to work a little harder to get that. The actual mentality I faced playing other people, and I want to hear what you think about this too. The mentality I faced with a lot of people in Upstate was to be just happy to be there with the other person, because we haven't seen another human in 3 months,
Yeah, exactly.
And so the whole bullshit surrounding this, the kind of thing we're getting caught up on now, felt like less of a big deal when we were coming up and learning. Do you feel like you had that similar experience?
Yeah, and I want to touch that again later from your point of view, because it doesn't really matter where you are on a list when there's 10 other people in the room, and that's it. That's the tournament.
Yeah.
You can only hold that standard so high, to the point where you're like, well, I know this guy he's fifth on the PR, but is his name Josh or is it Jared? I just don't know. I haven't actually, like, met him. It's to the point where it's like, okay, fuck it, like, let's all chill out and be homies.
Right.
I think, like, that's why smaller scenes kind of gave that new light to me, and for you too, because I know you were, like, we were both around for a very, very low energy, like, small but like caring group of people who just wanted to make do with what we have, what we had. And yeah, I just think that we are kind of blessed to have that, rather than immediately start learning in SoCal, where people don't care about you unless you've been West Balls before at a local.
Right.
But what was your experience like at Oneana, like the first, like, year or two? Like, what was it like to meet Justin and kind of build up the Oneana community?
It was interesting because it first started off with me finding Chess, because he was a junior when I was a freshman, and a couple months in to my freshman year, we met each other. This was after the documentary where I was like, shit, I gotta start taking this more seriously, because I'd played in high school, so I had a little bit of talent and some like LCD tournaments in my house, like shit like that. And Alex had been playing for a few months, and so we kind of started playing, and we had a real competitive nature between the two of us, so we got each other very good. And Oneonta didn't have a tournament. Well, actually, he hosted a house tournament, and Manalord came and he won, and that's when we met him, and he was like, yeah, you know, you guys are trying to get better, you come up to Syracuse, and like kind of start. That was like the sprinkles, the starting of the scene, kind of like revitalizing again. He kind of swept us up in the whole that whole kind of arc. But mostly it was
meeting him.
What's up?
That was your first time like meeting Mana?
That was, yeah, it was at Chess's apartment at Oneonta. It was called the Bring Back Underground Gaming, B-Bug. It's like 12 people, and it was my first tournament ever. That was like legit, like a real tournament.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I think I got like 5th or 7th. Doesn't matter, because after that point we were committed to finding tournaments on Facebook and traveling like every other weekend or every third weekend, or just trying to get out to these like locals, like just any tournament we could find. We went to RIT once, which is like a 4.5 hour drive, or 4 hour drive, something ridiculous. Went to Syracuse, but it was a lot of just like, for some reason we felt like it was really important. What we were trying to do was special and different, and that we had a real chance of becoming top players in whatever context, whatever this Melee thing was going to become, because this was like, you know, early 2014. We were swept up in all of it, in the national hype, the everything. And so it was a lot of fun meeting Upstate, and I think I just have a connection with all the people up there, and will continue to for so long, just because it was special whenever there was a tournament. Whenever there was any sort of get together, it was a chance for everyone to see, okay, like, what have you been working on? Have you been practicing as much as I have? I had rivalries with like 5 different people, because we were all like Wally West. We started at the same time. What's his name? It's a Falcon player.
Mask.
Oh yeah, Mask has been. There's another Falcon player who was less scary than Mask, but Mask was always, yeah. So it's just all these players that I was like, okay, I gotta be like, I bet I could beat him, and that was the inspiration for me to improve. And then we met at Syracuse that one time. We had that dollar money match.
I wish I remembered it.
You don't remember that? You sent me a message afterwards. I'll look up on Facebook Messenger right now.
Please do, because I remember us meeting, but I don't remember the money match.
I bet you I could find it.
You'll find it?
Yeah, I'll find it. I'm just gonna keep scrolling up. But yeah, it was like so ridiculously fun. And I was just so shocked that someone I'd never heard before, like, his, yeah, all right, 2116. So we met 2 years after. Can I read it? Can I read it to you?
What does it say?
So this was 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Yo, words cannot describe how happy I am that I played you today, dude. Good shit from both sides. Like, that was some all caps good Melee. Where are you from? And I go, wait, I want to be right. You're Jmook, right? Oh man. And then we start talking about the stupid money match that we had.
Yeah. I can picture myself with my long hair, just like huddle over my keyboard like 1:30, just like thinking about thinking about meeting you.
It was at 1:20 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know myself. I think I know myself.
But yeah, I mean, you don't remember it. Obviously, it was a big deal for you at the time, but whatever. Um, I guess it was a. What am I even trying to get at? It feels like such a blip, you know, because then we were just always kind of meeting at the same tournaments for the times we were still up there. Um, and seeing your rise to where you went to was so fascinating to me because there always felt like such a mismatched legend to who you were, that anytime anyone would talk about you, they would just feel like they were missing a large part of it. I think the big thing that was thrown around a lot was the talent that you had, which bothered me because I think that you do have talent, but I don't think that's even close to the full story. I think people really miss the work that you put in. That's what I'm getting at. Have you had a similar experience, or do you think that you're properly kind of seen for what you do?
I think I'm hyped up a little too much. I think it's just because we all grew in the same space for so long, and now that we're all like spaced out since then, now whenever like I go to a tournament, people come together and they they cheer for me, they talk in like Twitch chat, people message me, and it's amazing too because like I care about all these people, and I care about like my relationships with all of them, and I don't know. I think when I was on the rise, I was the reaction tech chasing Sheik. Like that was kind of my thing at the time, and that was my strongest point for sure because I practiced that the most. But I think over time, I just got more comfortable with the character. I started learning new things here and there. When I was learning at my peak, I think it was like 2016, 2017. Those 2 years I just did a lot of solo practice. I would every day I would analyze like a set like from a Sheik, and I would always like have new perspectives like Android, over Triforce, Kirby Kaze, Plup, Mewtwo King, Swedish Delight. I'd just try and broaden my spectrum of what is possible with the character, and then go from there. Because I think that it helped me the most to see different flavors of the same tool set.
That's smart. So exposure, and then would you practice on those skills that you would it be a very specific, like, okay, I'm going to work on this particular skill, or would you just kind of osmosis analyze?
A little bit of both. I would just take tidbits from each set or each like thing that I noticed that a certain Sheik does, and write it down, close my eyes and picture it in my head until it's like ingrained visually. Because I think it helps to just like see hitboxes and hurtboxes just like paused on the screen, and then you just kind of let that burn into your mind and save it for later.
Okay, so straight up hitbox hurtboxes. That's all right. And did you just decide on? Did someone show you to do that, or did you kind of use your intuition? Like, okay, this is important.
I just noticed certain things over time. Like if I saw like little patterns that I would pick up on, I would write them down, but then I would try and look for other things that I probably must have missed. I didn't really. It was all very micro instead of macro at that time. It was all just like little things that were new with the character, or just like things that looked strong and gave me like an advantage, rather than just like a broadened sense of like what I should do with the character overall. You know, where
Right.
where I should like, you know, follow these guidelines, the the manifesto.
Right. This was similar kind of to what I was talking with Mog. We were talking about kind of learning situations versus improving your mindset, and one or the other is not going to do everything. So if you are spending a lot of time figuring out, how do I stop from approaching unsafely, like these big questions, right? How do I pressure shield, most effectively or whatever. Those bigger questions are not going to help you when it comes down to execute. So you're saying that you a few years were specially dedicated towards just the execution, the micro situations.
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that was I mean, obviously the results came with that. Do you think like you sacrificed anything? Do you feel like there's any part of your gameplay that's missing, or do you think you're kind of happy with what you did?
Looking back, obviously there's so many things that I wasn't picking up on because I was young. I didn't have as many years under my belt.
Sure.
And still don't. I'm still very young, and I think what happened was that I spent so much effort and focus on little details, like little changes in like the way you drifted with an aerial, or how to like maximize your fair hitbox while like pushing away your hurt box. Little things like that. So I think that over time I kind of only cared about little things, which would hurt me when I would, start losing, because then I would start caring about every little thing that I lost to, rather than just like moving back away and just seeing everything as it is. So I think it came down because I wanted, when we started at the time, I was a little bit of a perfectionist. I wanted to hit everything, I was like that with cello too. I wanted to hit every single note, and not miss anything like that. So in terms of execution, yeah, it helped me, but I think that it would have helped a lot more if I did a little more macro analysis, or just figure out like what I'm generally not focusing on.
At this stage in your career, what are it seems like you're starting to expand out to these bigger questions, which is something I'm on the opposite side completely. I've been obsessed with these larger questions, and now I'm trying to actually, learn some some important tech skill, and actually work on my execution. But in this kind of transition, what are the questions you're asking yourself? Like, what's the most important thing to you now in this next stage of your career?
I guess the question for me is, if I, it's a matter of why am I playing this, or what am I playing this game for? Am I playing it to climb up in the rankings? Am I doing it because I wanna, show what my toolkit can do? Or do I just wanna, play the game like I play music, or when I play or do something that I enjoy? And I think that both are equally valid, and I don't think anyone could argue, or no one should tell you that you have to always play to win. Otherwise, why are you even pulling your controller? But I don't want to devalue strict mindsets for when you do play or when you do sit down. But in the end, I think this game is just really, really fun, and the second you try and tell yourself that it isn't, then you're not doing yourself any favor.
Right. Um, I
It seems,
love I love this type of I love this talk. Like that's the big question, right?
yeah.
It zooms out to the max in the scope of Melee is why, why do we play? Um, Not like why am I not improving or what do I need to improve? It's do I want to, and what brings me to sit down in front of a TV? Um, and it's almost a question that's never going to be answered, 'cause it's too damn slippery. It's every other day, it kind of changes here and there. Um, and so, for me, I'm gonna keep playing until until I don't feel like playing, right? I think that's not the whole story. It never will be, because some days I just don't feel like playing. It doesn't mean I'm done. So that question's really tricky for everyone. And I'm interested in it because I just feel like it's under asked. I think it's taken for granted a lot of times. And then when it comes down to what we're talking before, kind of our personal brand or our identity within the community, or whatever it is that we feel like we need to bring to either the Smash Fest or the tournament or whatever it is, like what's expected of us. If that goes into conflict with what we want out of the game, then all of a sudden we're in this huge, stress ball. My Am I playing this to represent my community and get a win for my boys, or am I here to push myself to my limits, or am I here to de-stress so I can focus on other parts of my life? It's like all of the above and none of the above. That sounded pretentious, but you get what I'm saying. Like
No, exactly.
it's always changing, um, and
I don't
so
think it's not a question that has a simple answer.
no,
It's something. It's like the question will change year after year. That you're, every day that you experience, the question will change, or the answer will change.
right, and it's the one thing I think I'm really looking looking for in these interviews and talking to more people playing the game is kind of hearing why they play it. So if you had to answer that, like, why do you play?
Why do I play?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you
I
said it
play.
before. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And it's also just, it's almost therapeutic to do something in the game and know that, like, at that exact moment, no one else could replicate it, and just know that there is an individuality to this game that no one can take away from. And to me, that is the most alluring thing. It's what draws me into this game every time I play it. I know that, like, okay, this is my experience, and how am I going to push it further?
Right.
And it's no different than playing an instrument. It really isn't. It's just like you have a toolkit, and what can you do to not only express yourself, but to make it, your own thing, your own, stamp on the world.
It's amazing.
Without, doing it for the sake of it.
Right. Just kind of whatever it is that needs to come out, just allowing it to do so.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you what your biggest questions are, like, when you think about Melee, when you think about your role in your community. Like,
My
do you find
biggest
yourself asking certain questions that, like, you keep thinking about them, but you never come up with, an answer. You kind of sit on them.
Yeah. My biggest questions are things that kind of go into my big problems and honestly my fears too. and it's similar to what you're saying. Why do I play? It's why do I make this podcast? Why do I make videos? Or why do I try to kind of inject this game into so many facets of my life? Why do I keep expecting or trying things? A lot of it's to do with ego and having to grapple with it. Like, am I doing this because of the gratification of having people admire me? Is that what I want? Do I want people to listen to me? Do I want people to respect me? Or do I just want to play good players? Do I really just want to be able to go to a tournament without putting a financial burden on myself? Like, what are my goals? And I've gotten to the point where I failed so many times that it's kind of boiled away a lot of the nonsense, and I get to spend less time doubting myself than I ever have. And when I ask why, it's just kind of a little check-in. Like, am I doing this for the right reasons? And oftentimes now I feel like I am. But the big questions I ask myself are usually, am I still on the right path? Am I doing these for the right reasons? And am I being honest with myself? And I feel like as long as those criteria are being met, where I'm not sacrificing too much, I'm not going down a path of self-sabotage or convincing myself that I need to scramble or hurry up or make drastic changes, while always kind of moving forward and still taking risks and still allowing myself to make mistakes. So it comes down to huge questions, and it's centered around this game, which is so strange because it's just a game. But what I've found is that my internal dialogue with my connection to this game, and I'll let you speak in a second.
No, I'm listening. I'm really.
I've found that my biggest revelations came from my intuition in the game. Let me say that in a way that actually makes sense. I've realized my priorities come very naturally to the decisions I make regarding Melee, which tournaments I go to, which events I decide to prioritize, when I record, when I do videos, all that shit. It's really helped me put into perspective everything else. It's like the middle tile of bingo is like free space. Melee's in my life. And I get to kind of put everything else around that in a way that's become pretty what's the word for it? It's sustainable. It's become a cornerstone of a life that's become pretty sustainable and pretty happy. Mm-hmm. And that's the best thing I've gotten out of this game, is just peace of mind that of all the things I could be doing, everything I could be practicing or improving on, I'm happy that I've stuck with this the amount I have and have been able to understand myself better because of it. Does that answer your question? I feel like I talked for 20 minutes straight.
No, I was gonna touch on that with you because from knowing you over the years, that was very blatantly, like, it was obvious to me that you cared about that. You cared about the way you put Melee into your life, and you never let it override everything else. You saw it as no more than another brick that built your house, just another part of your infrastructure, your schedule, and you never let that let it override anything else. But when you make time for Melee, it always seems like you were just thinking about Melee. That was the only thing that like you were there for it, and you're present, and you got a lot of. I think you got a lot of good experience and wisdom from that, from knowing how to structure your time and making the most out of every event, every little activity or hobby. You know, even in comedy, like I noticed that you felt very comfortable like expressing yourself when you were living and breathing for it in that moment.
Mhm.
So to me, it seems like you've developed this like insurance for your insecurities by just letting yourself flow exactly how you want to, while not wasting time about thinking about other things that are as important as what's happening right now.
Well,
like if you
yeah.
have a thought that you've been thinking about all day, you write it down. If you want to make a video, you make it that day, because if you do it any other time,
Well, let's not get too fairy tale about this. There a lot of times, you know, I have a lot of faults, and it's easy to kind of wrap it up in a nice way. I want you to know that it's not as free flowing as that. A lot of times I am kind of not ultra conservative, but I play it too safe. I take it too easy, and lean into the complacency of it a little too often. So there's perks to it. There's definitely upside to being comfortable with how much I practice 20 minutes a day. Strict, not strict, just that's what I end up doing. That's all I want to put towards it. I want to spend other time doing other things.
Mhm.
And you know, if I practice 20 minutes a day, I'm never going to be the best player in the world. You know, that's never going to happen. So there's a weird kind of defeatist idea that that will come up. I feel like we have to do another one of these. I gotta get you talking more, but you're just you're too much of a listener. You're a good listener. But it's
to me, like based on what I know about you, you know, obviously, you know, I only know you based on when I see you at tournaments or when we talk every once in a while. So obviously, I don't know everything, but I definitely see that when you make time for yourself, it seems like you stick to the habit and you kind of cling on to it, and it seems like you're unsure as whether or not it's helpful or it's gonna, you know, hold you back. You know, like practicing for 20 minutes a day, you know, it's gonna help you, of course. It's definitely gonna help you, and it's great that you have like a set time and a limit, you know, so at least you know for sure how much time you're gonna be spent practicing. But I also think that by always like doing it at the same time every day, always doing it, you're limiting yourself by seeing it more as a chore or as something that you just have to get through.
I do enjoy it. I look forward to it. But I agree. I think what you're getting at is like it just putting it as something that's not challenging yourself and getting comfortable in a routine, or just doing it for the sake of it and not doing it mindfully, right?
Yes, I'm not relaying it to you as a person. I'm saying I can see how someone could get frustrated by doing it like this, like as if it's like brushing your teeth every day.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. It has to be a focused effort. Otherwise, and that's the big thing I fight with in that habit is making it a good 20 minutes versus a bad 20 minutes. And there's a difference, of course. And that's kind of the next steps that I'm on, is trying to get that improvement. So I wanna wrap it up real quick. I want to ask you one final question. Take as long as you need. But that question, here's a scenario. You've met someone who's been playing for 1 year, practicing tech skill, getting the basics down. What would be your number one piece of advice to someone at this level if they wanted to get better?
Ooh, I meet a lot of people who play for that long, and you know, it's nothing to do with them because they're just learning. But you know, like you remember, like when you're like 1 year into playing, you're like how do I get better at like up tilting, or how do I get better at doing this or executing this, or how do I beat Falco's lasers?
Right.
You know, it's not the question is getting on to a broader point, but it's not specific enough. And so it's really hard. It's always hard to answer questions that are very broad. But I guess what I would say is that I would tell them that everything works in this game, that there's always some combination that will play out in your favor, and don't think in just don't think in absolutes when you're thinking about like what to do or what not to do. You know, there's not defensive or aggressive. There's no like, it's not neutral or punish. It's everything just mushed together into this I don't know. It's just a mess, and we can take things out of it. We can find patterns and how the game should, quote unquote, should go. But in the end, I would just say to let yourself try everything out, try every option, and you know, if you find something that you like, you know, remember it and then use it. You know, start putting it into your play, but don't let yourself just think in absolutes. Don't think that just because something doesn't work that it's never going to work ever.
Jmook, I appreciate you coming on. This game is a mess. It's a big ball of something. But this was a great conversation. I feel like you've brought up some more questions in me. And you asked me more questions than I asked you. So next time you're going to be interviewed.
Well, it's because you talked more. I had very broad answers that raised more questions than answered them.
Hey, well, I had a good time.
I had a good time as well, man. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, man. Take care. Thanks for coming.